Today we're going to be drawing your most requested flowers using ink pens and markers. And before you start, don't forget to hit the like button so I can keep creating art videos for you. Now let's get started. We're going to start with my most requested flower tutorial, a sunflower. I'm using a dollar store red color pencil, super basic for the sketching because it kind of disappears when we use the markers to color it. So when we're going to use markers, I usually think this is a little bit better than using a normal pencil. But if you don't have a red pencil like this, just use a normal sketching pencil and erase it a little bit before coloring and you should be fine. So start with 2 circles like I did, one inside the other one, and then you can start drawing some petals coming from the inner circle, but don't do it like you learned to do as a kid, one petal next to the other. Try to draw them a little bit more randomly, just play with it and make some petals bigger, some smaller, play with the overlay of petals, making some hide behind the other petals and some clumps of petals like being closer together and some more further apart. This is kind of like what we see in nature, so we're trying to replicate that. And when you have something like this, you can get a yellow marker, a brush pen, or watercolor, whatever it is that you're using to color it, and start painting each petal with 2 lines like this. So you're gonna leave some white and do these 2 lines along the petal. As you can see, each petal is going to be a little bit different, and you can try to make one of the lines thicker than the other to create a little bit of movement on your petals. I have a really hard time coloring things in circles like this without it looking weird in the end or like crooked. So as you can see, I'm spinning the sketchbook over and over again to get the right position for my hands to color each petal. And now that we have all the petals in this yellow base color, it's time to add a new layer. So grab a darker yellow marker or an orange marker, and now we can add a little bit of shadow on the petals that are behind other petals. To do that, you can kind of go over some parts of the yellow we already have on paper when it's right behind another petal. So we're basically trying to create a shadow, right? If there's something on top of something else, the thing that's back is going to be a little bit darker. So this is exactly what we're trying to create. And you can choose a shadow side to create a little curved effect on each petal. So for example, here I'm trying to make the right side of these petals a little bit darker like this. Do you see what I'm doing? Also, the closer you get to the center, the darker the petals will be. So you can add a little bit of shadows there too, where the petals are beginning to grow from the center out. And when you're done adding this layer on all petals, we can start adding some little circles in the center of the flower. Here I'm using a brown ink pen to make these little circles. And is this pen necessary for doing this? Absolutely not. You can literally do this with a brown marker too and make dots instead of little circles. You can also use a brown fine line ink pen or even a brown colored pencil if you want to be a little bit more detailed. So don't worry if you don't have this kind of pen. Just start to add little circles or dots in the center like this. When you're done with this part, we're going to add a little tint of color on the top of the brown little circles. I'm starting with a green right in the center. Again, you don't need this specific pen I'm using. You could just use a marker, a colored pencil, anything you have. Then you can use a light yellow around it and this dark peach color that's kind of like a warm light brown around the yellow like this. Now, again with the brown, we can finish some delicate drop shadows. I would tell you to not do too much of this to keep your flower delicate and nice and still yellow. You don't really want it to be too dark. Just add a little drop shadow on the back petals when the petals overlap. But honestly, now that I'm recording the voiceover and I'm looking at this drawing, I think it would even have looked better if I used just a colored pencil instead of an ink pen. So we learn as we go, I guess. Anyways, just make sure to leave some white lines on the petals as the light spots. And now I'm just adding a darker layer of color in the center like this. And this is our beautiful sunflower. That was done with these markers and pens. Now let's move on to the next one. My next most requested flower tutorial is roses, and I confess I took so long to make a rose tutorial because this is a hard one, guys. Like, I honestly tried to do a rose tutorial before and the rose looked so bad I just couldn't post it, but I think I kind of figured it out how to do it. So let me show you the steps. First, you're gonna do a U shape like this and draw some petals like this at the base of the U. From here, we can sketch a few more petals that go around the top like this. This is kind of starting to shape our flower. Now you can add some curves for the petals inside like this. Honestly, just copy what I'm doing because it's kind of hard to describe it in words and it's not super logical. So feel free to pause it and just copy these sketch lines. Basically, we did some tiny petals inside and now we're gonna add some big ones opening up all around the U shape like this. And as you can see, they're pretty random. Just make sure the bottom ones are bigger to create the depth effect. So the petals that we want them to look they're closer to the viewer. They should be a little bit bigger, and the petals in the back, so on the top, should be a little bit smaller. And now comes the fun part, the little folds that will make this look like a rose. So on top of these petals in the U shape, you can add some uneven lines like this, as if the tip of the petal is folding out. You don't need to do them in all of them, but at least on the bigger petals. And I want to make this rose pink, so if you want to do it in another color, just adapt the same layering of tones with the color of your choice. So basically here I'm starting with this super intense pink that will be the base color for this flower. And now I'm starting with the darker spots. How do I know which ones are the darkest spots? Well, if you look at a picture of a rose, you're gonna see that the closer the petals are to the center, the darker they will be. By the way, this is how I learned to draw using reference pictures. So if shading is confusing to you and you never really know where to put the shadows, start using reference pictures to draw and just try to copy the light scheme of a picture, and you're gonna get the hang of it with time. Basically, we're coloring most of the flower and we're trying to leave a little white line between each petal I color so I don't get lost, but we're going to color that later too. Just make sure you leave the folds of the petals white, and now we can get a darker tone like I have here to add some shadows. I'm starting with this bottom petal here that's almost falling out, and the spaces in between petals where they are getting closer to the center and getting less light. And when you're done with this, you can get a lighter color and fill part of the leftover spaces just to have an intermediate tone between this intense pink and the white, because I think it was a little bit too drastic. But make sure to leave some white spotlights on the tips of the petals. This is super optional, but I'm using a light purple to kind of blend the colors a little bit and darken the white spots. And now with an ink pen or a color pencil, a dark color of whatever material you want to use, just add some dark shadows in between petals to make them look a little bit more realistic. And this is our beautiful rose. Super cute. I use these markers and pens to do this one if you want to take some notes, but I also have all these materials linked in the description. And now we are going to move on to a peony, which is one of my favorite flowers to draw because they are super satisfying. So basically start with an oval shape and a little circle inside like this. The little circle is a little bit on top of it because it's going to be like the opening of the flower. And now at the base of the oval shape, start adding some petals curving towards the little circle, and then some smaller petals curving from the top like this, and then add some extra ones inside. Look how cute. Finish with some loose petals on the outside opening up like this. And for this one, I want to make like a cream color flower. So I'm gonna start with this peach color on the shadow areas, leaving the light spots white, kind of like we did for the rose, but this one is easier because it's just coloring the spots behind other petals. And with a darker tone, add another layer of these shadows, basically going over the same spots but in smaller areas like this, just intensifying the shadows a little more. I think I could go over with the first tone a little more to give the petals a little bit more color, because I think I left a lot of white. So here I'm just increasing the size of the first tone on each petal, and now I'm adding a little darker shadow with a dark gray just where the petals overlap and where they are hiding behind other petals. To be very honest, I think I kind of went a little overboard with this gray. So if you want, you can do it a little less than me. And now with our darkest tone of choice, the brown, I'm doing the darkest shadows we have. As you can see, they are super small and delicate, but they create this more intense contrast and it creates depth in the flower. It honestly looks good without the dark shadows. So it's kind of like just a style choice. If you want to make it look more like an illustration, more like a painting, you can just skip this part and just leave it like with the lighter colors. And now I'm using the peach color again to blend the colors a little bit and hopefully hide the gray, because I ended up not really liking the gray so much. And this is the beauty of alcohol markers. The more you layer it, the more the colors are going to blend with each other and kind of create its own tone. So they look really interesting and can create some really unique tones when you mix them. With this one, I really want to leave the white light spots on the tips of the petals, but they're looking a little bit invisible. So I'm going to contour a little bit on the outside with this light gray. And this is our beautiful peony. Super cute and done with these colors over here. Now let's go to our last flower of the day, a poppy flower. I'm doing this one because it has a little bit of a different structure. So I wanted to show you a different style of flower. We'll start with this curve and a little oval shape at the bottom like this, and add two big shaky petals going around in the back of this small circle, which is is going to be the center, and then one more folding up like this and another one loose at the bottom. If this is not making sense yet, don't worry, it's gonna look like a flower soon. Now with this red that's kind of like a brick color, I'm just gonna color all the petals but making lines coming from the center, which is that little oval shape, towards the tips, like the ends of the petals, like this. Depending on the pigment of your markers, you're gonna be able to see more or less the brush stroke. Like some markers, you really can't see much of the brush stroke, but this one, as you can see, you can really see it. So we're going to use this as an opportunity and add some movement to the petals. Just move with the curves and move from the center towards the edges of the petals. And once you have all of them colored, get a darker tone. In this case, I'm going with this, I think it's like a burgundy color, and add some shadows like we did with the other flowers. Just go over the spots that are covered by other petals, or kind of like where you imagine that you wouldn't receive much light. Maybe there are areas that are hiding or closer to the center like this. And now with the brown pen, I'm adding the details of the center of this flower, and you're basically gonna add these little curves around the oval shape as if it's a sphere effect. Here I'm just coloring inside to make it darker. I also thought this could use a tint of yellow because I was kind of trying to make this more of an orange red tone of a flower, and it's just a really deep, you know, brownish red, which is nice, but here I'm just trying to make it a little bit more orange, and it works. This is the amazing thing about markers. I just love to layer them and create new tones and new colors. And because this flower is so dark, I ended up needing a darker pen for the details in the center, so you could totally just use a black ink pen, you know, a black colored pencil or something like that. I ended up going with this dark purple. Honestly, it looks black. Just adding more lines like this around the center. And now I'm going to show you a magic trick. Are you ready? Bam! This is the coolest art supply I own, guys. I was trying to find something that would be like a white gel pen. You guys know I just love the white gel pen so much. It's my best friend. But I wanted to make thinner and more delicate lines, and I finally found it. Like, look at this thing. It's super cool. I randomly found this on Amazon and I'm absolutely in love. It's super satisfying to use. I never used a white gel pen again, guys. I know. I'm just adding some white dots on the tips of each of those lines in the center because it ended up being a little too dark. And look at the difference. Like light spots, nothing like light spots. I swear this is like insanely helpful for marker and ink drawing, guys. So like if you are into this kind of drawing and this style, buy this. Seriously, like this is amazing. But anyway, obviously you can just use a white gel pen for this. You can even use a white colored pencil, preferably a watercolor white pencil, because they work really well to create light spots on marker drawings. You can also add some little lines on the outsides of the petals like this, just to create some texture and make it look a little alive. If you're interested in any of these materials I used, I have them all linked in the description so you can check them out. And this is our beautiful poppy flower. This is the end of this tutorial, guys. I hope you liked it and learned something new. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. Thank you so much for subscribing, and I will see you next time. Bye!